Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night to everyone, wherever you may be across our lovely world. And it is particularly bright and sunny today. Thanks so much for joining us here live on the one and only Serverless Office Hours. We are streaming on the AWS Twitch channel and also the AWS Events channel on YouTube. I'm Julian. I'm a developer advocate for serverless here at AWS. And this week, Darryl has graduated from the chat. So, Darryl, welcome to Serverless Office Hours. It is a pleasure to have you. Darryl's been joining us most weeks for, it seems like a year. Darryl, I've actually met you first as well. I think it was joining us last year, maybe at reInvent. But yeah, welcome to Serverless Office Hours, Darryl. For people who don't know you, can you just give us an intro? Welcome to Serverless Office Hours, Darryl. I think Darryl's got some audio things, so we'll get on.
I have some mic issues here. Just give me a second.
That's quite all right. That's quite all right when you're ready. That's all right, Darryl. Take your time when you get ready. So yeah, well, back to Serverless Office Hours. It is super cool to be able to have people who are watching every kind of week. And Darryl had written some blog posts and was talking about what is going on. So see, this is when you know we are doing Serverless Office Hours live. So you can see that the questions are comments and things are happening. Eerie edits, well, we are just working out some technical glitches, microphones and speakers and all things like that. Darryl, if you are there, I don't know if you can mute your speakers. Maybe that'll help, or grab some headphones in. But I'm sure Darryl's super sorted and working it out. But while we're here, to send us your questions and your comments or what you'd like to talk about today. Basically, we have a sort of series that we're going on at the moment, which is all about AI coding. And so we're talking to some luminaries in the community, people like Darryl himself and some others, and how they AI code. So yeah, tell us your questions, your things, your comments of how you've been using AI coding and what has been workful for you.
Okay, I'm back now. Hopefully you can hear me properly now.
Darryl, we can hear you fine.
Perfect. Okay. Maybe Julian, you can just say what you said earlier again, because I honestly don't remember now. So.
Excellent. So I have another one. Oh, I think I'm even complicating myself. There we go. I also had another browser window open because I was checking. So hello, everybody. Well, welcome back to Darryl. We've got our audio gremlins sorted. As I started to say, Darryl has graduated from the chat. He's been watching Serverless Office Hours and being a great part of our community for many years, I think now. And it's been great to meet you. So Darryl, for people who don't know you, tell us about Darryl.
Yeah, so I'm a cloud solutions architect at Ciena. I've a telecom equipment manufacturer. I've been in the industry for many years. I started out as a software developer. I worked in C++, C, embedded systems, many years working in the Java space, microservices, containers. Even spent a few years working on an AI ML team before AI and ML took over the world. So had a lot of experience in that, FinOps, DevOps, pretty much everything. These days, I'm more on the architecture side, building solutions, dealing with internal processes, dealing with getting AI models set up across all of the providers, that kind of thing. Spent a lot of time lately, though, building projects that I share on my blog and share with the AWS Community Builder community. And so that's me. I'm more into developing these days than I ever have been with the advent of AI coding assistance. It generally makes it a whole lot more pleasant to actually develop things again than when I did many years ago. So.
Oh, definitely. And that was going to be my first question is, the evolution of AI coding from just, tab complete to, agents and doing a whole bunch of stuff for you. How's that sort of evolution happened in your world, and what have you seen, and what's gone well, what's gone not so well?
Yeah, I'll give you a little bit of a background. So about 5 or 6 years ago, I spent time in the AI ML team, like I just mentioned. So my main role was the ML ops guy, setting up all of the Kubernetes, setting up the AWS environments, working so that the data scientists could do their job. But I did a lot of time learning, because I don't really like running things where I don't really understand how it's all working myself. So I did a lot of time learning all of the theory around like neural networks, computer vision, reinforcement learning, natural language processing, all that stuff. And I learned a lot. It is really mostly just calculus and statistics and probability theory, and LLMs just predict the next word in a sequence. So there's not really anything super crazy intelligent about it all. But in that team, we didn't really get a whole lot of traction with the products we were working on. We're working on products for our company. We didn't really get a whole lot of traction with the AI ML approaches we were taking and buy-in from the company that they were going to actually be successful to help us. So, of course, over the last few years, natural language and LLM specifically have kind of taken over the world. So when ChatGPT showed up, I was pretty happy to have it as a Google search replacement, which is really all I saw it as a Google search replacement. And then like you were mentioning about code completion in various IDEs. So that was pretty useful. But I didn't really see it as something that was groundbreakingly going to change the world or anything like that. No, nothing that's going to really change the life of a developer. But then, I don't know, about a year and a half ago, I was a real skeptic that there was a lot to this. So about a year and a half ago, I got convinced to take another stab at it. And I was really impressed with what I was seeing. So I started playing around with Cursor at the time, and I thought it was much better than anything I'd ever seen in Visual Studio Code with Copilot, for example. I had a Cursor subscription for many months, but then I heard about Claude Code, and then my world changed. So I tried it out. I thought it was much better. At first, I was really thrown off by the lack of an IDE and how everything ran in the CLI, and I'm sure that was a pretty common thing for many people. I've worked for 20 years building code in an IDE, and the idea that, hey, you just type things in a command window and everything is handled there was really, really difficult for me to grasp, I think. But after a while, I realized that it's actually much better for me. What I do is I still keep Visual Studio Code open with my projects, but I kind of work in the window, looking at the code and making my own changes, and then switch back to the CLI to interact with Claude. So.
Yeah, interesting. I think I had the same kind of evolution where I was also very much used to being in an IDE. Also use Cursor. We've obviously got Kiro and things like that, partly IDE, part CLI. And I sort of flick between the two. And I think depending on the project I'm working on, I think some net new stuff, I've been happy to just do it in the CLI and just keep cranking. And the CLI is awesome for doing things even on my laptop or doing settings or things like that where an IDE doesn't even make sense. But there are some things where I was doing, Serverless Land is a big, pretty good website, a big website that I run. But I've been doing a lot of sort of tidying up of a lot of that stuff that's hung around for many months and just needed to be fixed. But I sort of feel as though I need the IDE in that, because then it is all like, what's the structure? Where's the sitting? Where's my files? How's all that kind of happening? So it's interesting. And then there are two approaches, using a AI native IDE or then just having a Claude Code or a Kiro or something in the terminal, but in a Visual Studio Code or some other kind of thing. So yeah, it's an interesting space.
I found that the real estate issue was a real problem for me, honestly. There's just not enough window space in the IDE to do everything I wanted to do in the with the AI assistant. So to me, that was the biggest thing.
Cool. And so then you mentioned Claude Code, that sort of the spark went off with Claude Code, despite you trying some other kind of things. What was it about Claude Code that just did it for you, other than just it worked?
It just seems so much smarter. Like since then, of course, I've tried lots of other tools. I've tried Kiro. I've tried I can't remember the names of all of them. There's a lot of tools that are comparable now, but it just seems so much smarter. I think it's the idea that it looks across all of your code at the same time, is able to use all kinds of tools to run commands in the background. It's just so much more powerful. I remember this was like a year ago when Claude Code came out. There's lots of other platforms that do this kind of thing now, but when Claude Code came out, it seemed pretty innovative in that it can do all these things. So after I started using it for a couple of months, I ditched Cursor because I really hadn't been using it at all. And I had a Claude Code $20 subscription, and probably the same story with many people. I had a $20 subscription, and then one day I was doing a lot, and you have to wait until 4 p.m. tomorrow to be able to continue. So that didn't sit with me very well, and I had to get my project done. So I ponied up for the $100 plan, of course. And then a while later, I was doing a really big project a couple weeks later, and then I gave in and signed up for the 20 max plan. So I've been on the 20 max plan for like 8 months since then. So I'm addicted now. So
I think that's a common trajectory of many people. I want more tokens. I need more tokens.
Yeah.
So this started. Yeah, carry on.
No, I was just going to say, in addition to Claude Code, I still do use Copilot. I think it's really great for PR review. So I have all my projects set up in GitHub, and I have Copilot set up. I find that really useful. It catches a lot of things that I missed when the PR reviews come in. And I also have a ChatGPT $20 subscription. I really like using all the different harnesses / AIs as competing against each other. So sober second or third thought, the way I think about it. So I do a survey of the key questions between them all and see if they agree. I think this is a really powerful thing, because each model, as everybody knows, is super confident. But if you get multiple of them to agree, I think it's pretty good, that a sign that you're on the right track, basically.
So how do you then set that up? So you've obviously got your your Claude Code running. You're running you're just running them in other terminals, and then asking the same question of multiple models, or do you have one write an artifact and another one read that? What's the setup for that happening?
Yeah, what I usually do is I paste the artifacts between them. Honestly, it's not a very ideal setup. The focus more is Claude Code, but what I typically do for the case where I'm using ChatGPT is I do paste things into the ChatGPT UI. With GitHub Copilot, of course, it's all handled inside of the PR review process. So.
So you're just getting the sort of automatic agent hook that's going to kick in as soon as the PR is done, and that's going to do the reviews there.
Yeah.
Do you have lots of Claude terminals up and running? I mean, I see some people bragging and going on about how many agents they're running at some time. Is that a thing? Does it matter?
Honestly, I am not working in a very optimal way. So I use a Mac, and I use iTerm 2, and I have one tab open where I'm working on project 1, and I do have multiple tabs open running Claude, but I'm not using the TUI or anything like that. I'm really not running in an optimal fashion. I really need to get into that. I'm also not running in a very optimal fashion with my context window usage as well. I'm basically not cleaning up as much as I should. I have a lot to learn in those cases. So.
Yeah, but I also think there's a sort of corollary story about focus as well on what you're doing, and the more you have open. I mean, I was talking to somebody at an event last week, and they were saying, well, it's like email. I mean, I may have my email thing up and running, but I don't write, 6 emails at the same time. My train of thought, I want to concentrate on something. And sure, if I need to send something and then it needs to go off and do something, then I can task switch. But he said, I'm very deliberate about what I task switch to, because my brain also has a context, and my context also needs to be clear and understanding what's going on. If I'm jumping around between all these kind of things, that doesn't help my brain context. So I sort of like that analogy, that we bring it back to the human aspect too.
Yeah, I'm a little confused by some of those stories, because unless they're auto allowing Claude to do everything, how can you keep a session going for hours?
True.
Yeah, I don't really understand how that works. I've heard those stories, but like I said, I usually have a few on the go, but a lot of the time it's just because I was working on a project for 3 hours and then worked on something else, and the old window was still there. I'm not really running 3 or 4 things at the same time. I don't know how you could possibly do that. I guess some people do, but.
And do you have any issues, if terminals close or something bombs out or something, some of that context inside the terminal is lost? I know some can be served into memory. So just walk us through how you would think from that.
Yeah, at the beginning, I found that was a real problem with Claude Code, and it didn't really handle your context window getting filled. You would lose everything or a lot, and it was very frustrating. I find that it's much smarter in the more recent versions of saving everything before it's about to run out of context. And I make big advantage of the -" continue option on Claude Code. So as long as you run that, it seems really good now compared to where it was, like I say, a year ago. So
So we've got some people in the chat who've asking some questions and some favorites as well. Daniel Habib, welcome in San Francisco, but originally from Brazil. So hopefully enjoying San Francisco. But so you don't feel left behind as are you leaving kind of things. We've got Borba Jose, hello from Brazil. Joining us, and one of our internal AI absolute gurus is Higgy Park. So welcome to you as well. And Sahil Bimjani, hopefully I haven't messed up your name too much, but welcome via YouTube as well. And we do have Borba Jose also then had a question. Today the problem for programmers isn't just getting fired; it's becoming unemployable. Those AI tools are becoming really good. What's the future of programming in the era of AI? Darryl, what would you say?
Well, I think there's a real divide. I think these tools are super powerful for more senior developers like myself, who kind of know what things are supposed to look like. They have experience writing React applications. They have experience writing backend app systems. They kind of know when the AI is doing things wrong. I think the real challenge, though, is in junior developers who haven't had that experience of building their own apps and testing and debugging. I think it's really difficult for those people. They're under a lot of stress to compete with people in their peers, basically. And the faster you get code out, the better you'll do. But just because you get the code out really fast, of course, doesn't mean that it's correct. So it's a really challenging space. And I don't know if in 10 or 15 years, are we going to have senior developers? Because all the people that are junior developers now, I don't understand how they're going to get the experience that people like I did when I was a junior developer. So,
yeah, definitely. I think it's unknown. I think a lot of the AI coding is also turned into architecture instead of syntax. So I don't have to type up TypeScript or Java or Python or anything, the syntax, and make sure I've got all that correct. AI is really good at that. But software architecture and design is still sort of important, I think, for important kind of things. And ultimately, there is a responsibility if there's something going out into production with software. Whoever's writing the AI, not the AI model, is responsible for that as well. Then saying that, also learning is incredible with AI. So I've been able to, in my role, I've got to sort of broadly cover as many things as I can. And, I've had to do some TypeScript stuff early this year. I hadn't really done much on TypeScript and some, web frameworks for the front end. And AI was amazing to just say, tell me the fundamentals, what I need to do here. This version is upgraded to this. Tell me about what that means. React hooks, for example, I remember doing all of that client side, server side, and the whole React word, and just be able to non-judgmentally ask as many questions as I needed to, and be able to look at code and understand that. And I remember spending a good week, I think, learning about some front-end things I didn't know about before then tackling a big migration. So there's a learning thing to do. I don't know if junior engineers are going to know what questions to ask or not. So interestingly, but then Richard D. Larson, thanks for joining us, says, anecdotally, I've watched a lot of our junior devs pick up these tools far more quickly than many of the senior ones. I'm not as worried about our junior devs as much as others. Interesting. So I think there's many ways to talk about this.
One comment I have on that, actually, they pick up the tools, but do they pick up the software development process and all of the problems that go along with it? That's my question. So
cool. And Richard comes back and says they learn from tools, and I think that is interesting. I think what is iterated, I'll get back to you shortly, but I also think that with open source, being able to pull any kind of what good looks like off the internet, hopefully, and then just say, explain to me in detail how this, why this works, how this works, why you chose this one. Would this be a good way to do it in my application? Would it not be? If you were a security reviewer or a pen tester or a architect reviewing my CV, how would you critically look at this? And you've got to throw all of these other ways to sort of force the AI to tell you what you're going to do. So Erie Edits, you said, I have a feeling that eventually we'll hire developers and other skilled workers who employ their own agents, like hiring a carpenter who has their own tools. Just because I can buy a hammer doesn't mean I can build a house. I like it. We're getting lots of comments. We'll get back to Darryl shortly, but let's get the comments as we're going. Richard back. So far, they've embraced the processes as well, at least in our groups. Internal processes, what your company sees as good and what your company sees as normal is something that is part of the training kind of thing. And then GMT-6, I teach at a large public technical college. How do I figure out what tools to have my students work with as the landscape changes so fast? Or do I essentially say, use them all? What did you say, Darryl?
One challenge in that front, at least in the company that I work at, is legal and other concerns around all the tools and what they're doing with their data. So we've had a real challenge to be able to get all of the latest tools approved for us to use. I'm pretty sure that's a common thing in most bigger corporations, at least anyway. Like, for example, we're not allowed to use Claude Code at work. We don't have an agreement with Anthropic. So we're using Open Code as a core. So I think Open Code works almost as good as Claude Code and works in a similar fashion, but it's the one we're allowed to use. So
makes sense. And we just need an agent focused on teaching the human what the other agent did and why. And I think fine. I mean, and that's often a chat thing, as I said before, that just asks a question saying what I think we get wrapped up with a lot with what the term agent means, and sometimes it's just asking a question to the AI as well. I think you're always coming back with great wisdom. It's difficult to pick a singular winner. As you note, the landscape is changing so quickly. It seems like there's a new leader every week. Emmy says, how's this different from a junior dev learning Python only instead of assembly? And then Higgy came back with a comment I was sort of going to echo, pick a tool and learn the underlying principles and practices. And I think what we're going to be talking about today with Darryl, who build a serverless blogging platform, when you have a use case, use that. So just start with something that annoys you. I was looking at something internal, and somebody's a keen cyclist, and they had built a sort of ways for cycling. And even though there are ones that exist, it doesn't have to be something that doesn't exist. This was something that they were learning about agents, and they were learning about front end and vocation and all these kind of things. So yeah, pick something you could do and just go for it. Richard says exactly. It's really just learning to use the tools like we've all been doing forever. So yeah, appreciate all the questions and comments. Love to hear what people think as well. Find your use case. But yeah, Darryl, as we're eventually getting there, you were building a serverless blogging platform with AWS and Claude Code. So yeah, do you want to just take us through what that was about and what you learned in the process?
Sure. Again, I totally agree with what you just said along the lines of build projects that are really meaningful to you and useful to you. Maybe they might seem silly to other people. I don't know if that's the case with this one, but there's a lot of projects that I've built that wouldn't have any interest to many other people. So I think you need to build things that you're interested in. And from that, you'll be able to be more interested in continuing and expanding on them. So
in fact, build silly things. That should be the thing. And in fact, I've had to tell my agents, because they get all excited, I want to build this, I want to try this out. This was a web kind of thing I was learning, and they'd build this all flashy whiz bang thing. And I'm like, I don't need that. I don't need it. I just actually need a demo, which is probably going to be like 10 lines of code, but explain the heck out of that to me. I don't need a fancy framework. Like let's go, simple and explain it to me. So yeah, it's
perfect.
Just all about coaxing your agent.
Okay, so I have some slides here, and I have a demo I'll show at the end of the platform. Some of this stuff I've already talked about in our chat so far, but basically I want to walk through how I built my personal blog from scratch as a serverless application using Claude Code as my pair programmer, I guess you call it. The headline numbers are that it's a fully featured blogging platform. Initially, at least, I spent 5 evenings working on it, maybe 10 hours of actually me sitting there typing code in, and it only costs a few dollars a month to run. Because of serverless services of an AWS, of course. I'll cover what I built, how the workflow feels in practice, and where I think, of course, human judgment is still essential to be successful. So I already went through this slide. Basically, I've been around for a long time. There's some links there to my LinkedIn profile on my website. I have a whole bunch of blog posts on there about this project and others that if people are interested. So in my particular case, I've had a few different blogging platforms over the years, but the most recent one I had before I built my own was running on Hashnode. So Hashnode and Vercel, a combination. I believe that Vercel actually runs on AWS, but a lot of it is really abstracted. So it worked for me, but some of the things kept frustrating me. I got basic analytics that was good to see how many people were actually viewing my articles, but that stopped working after a while. And I was reaching out to Hashnode and Vercel support and wasn't really getting anywhere. They don't really have a whole lot of support. I saw on Vercel that you could actually pay like $20 or $30 a month for analytics that were long-term analytics and really what I wanted, but I couldn't really see myself paying $20 or $30 a month for that. So and I also wanted to be able to set up things like notifications to users when I posted a new blog and weekly newsletters. I haven't actually sent any newsletters out, but I wanted a platform where I could send out a newsletter like lots of other people in the community do. So I didn't really see a nice way to do this with the Hashnode Vercel setup. Like I had a repo that I had to clone that had all of the front end code in it, but I'm not really a front end person that much. So it seemed very challenging to get where I wanted to with all of that. So. And I work with AWS every day. We run multiple production load platforms in AWS, but I didn't really have any visibility with my blogging platform, at least how it was all running. So I wanted to place a place to make use of all the AWS services that I don't get to use and put them all together. So, and honestly, the final push came when Rand Eisenberg, I'm sure everybody knows Rand Eisenberg, Rand the Builder. He put a post out about how he rebuilt his blog site using Claude. And that kind of pushed me over the edge. Like, okay, Rand did that. I know Rand, I've talked to him before. I'm going to give it a try myself. So that was kind of the impetus for actually doing it. So the main features of my site, I wanted to have public pages that are pre-rendered static HTML. So I want it to be really fast using CloudFront and global reach of all the CloudFront locations. So I wanted the admin panel of how the site was managed to be in React, because I did for a couple of years build apps in React. So I'm generally familiar with React, not a front-end guru, but at least I know generally how it's supposed to work. So I wanted to build a single page app. I wanted the editor to be WYSIWYG for certain cases and also raw markdown for other cases, so you can switch between them. I wanted to take advantage of Bedrock somehow. So what I did with that was I have Bedrock set up so that the SEO, search engine optimization titles and descriptions and stuff, I get initially generated by Bedrock, and then I tweak them based on whether or not I think it makes sense with whatever Bedrock came up with. Oh, sorry. And then I wanted the newsletter system I mentioned earlier, where I could send out basically like a roundup of my articles that I published, or I could go and find links to other articles and have a nice looking a view of that showing up in the from my users. So one big thing for me was the article previews. I wanted them to look just like the final post. So you were asking earlier about how I basically use AI, different AIs to validate things. One of them is when I write an article, I take the link to the preview page, and it's a real URL on the internet that uses a random UID, so it's not really guessable. And I feed that to the AI and say, hey, do you see any problems with this blog, or do you see any issues with this? So that was one of the really big things that I wanted to implement. So I guess I guess the next thing I want to talk about was email. So I was actually surprised. I had heard many stories about getting access to production access to SES on AWS being very difficult, but strangely they approved my request right away. So everything runs with SES, and the analytics, as I mentioned earlier, I was able to build some custom analytics that look just like all the analytics you see from all the platforms out there, but of course they cost almost nothing. Where I built them and store all the data in DynamoDB. So it's very full featured. I also have backups, disaster recovery, use GitHub Actions for CI/CD. So everything that you'd expect from a really professional platform, but I pay very little for it, and I built it and manage it all myself. So this is pretty busy, but it does show you that I did pull in a lot of AWS services. So this is a graph showing all of the different components. There's a CloudFront distribution that runs it all. There's the admin single page app and an API. All of the images and documents are stored in S3. Lambda functions handle all the API calls and building the pages and such. DynamoDB stores, sorry, I mentioned earlier about the articles being stored, but they're actually stored in DynamoDB. The pages and the images are stored in S3. And then there's just a few tables. I use Cognito user pools, SES to send all the emails. Bedrock generates the SEO. I use EventBridge Scheduler. My favorite service in AWS is EventBridge. So I use EventBridge Scheduler for sending out the newsletters. I think there's 16 or 18 AWS services involved. So it runs the whole gamut of serverless services on AWS.
So your Lambda functions, are they sort of hydrating and sending out HTML in a sort of server-side rendering kind of thing, or how much is static and how much is then dynamically?
So all the pages are built statically, so for speed. So the Lambda builds them and stores the files, and then they get generated into static HTML when I press the publish site button, basically.
Cool.
So this one here is showing some of the supporting services. Again, I'm using many different services just to kind of take advantage of all the services out there, and the idea that it's a really low volume site, so the cost on these is really low. I have CloudWatch alarms and dashboards, SNS topics that send me Slack messages whenever new people sign up, whenever problems happen with any of the emails, using CloudFront functions, S3 access logs, KMS keys, backup to a different account. There's all the full gamut of all the things that I would build in a real production application, but in a small environment where I can kind of play around with them all and understand how they all work in great detail. We do use some of these in the production apps that I build at work, but we don't get to use them all. So it's great to have a place where I can test them all out. So.
Yeah, and I love, just looking at the backup vault and the daily backup plans, and cross account policy, KMS, keep a rotation on. Yeah, great. I mean, not to say we have to do service bingo to get all the services, but I mean, there are a lot of serverless services you can pull together to build some pretty robust things. And I mean, this is a blogging platform, and if you had I suppose a billion hits over a year, I don't know if this would even strain much more than it does already. That's
the beauty of a lot of these services. They scale when you need, and they cost very little. So I really like it. like to take advantage of all these things that I've written articles about and shared articles about. So it was my time to do it all. So I was very happy. So I mentioned about article previews. So one thing I really liked was to be able to create draft articles and share with others and AI to critique. So they look exactly like what's published when you do the actual publish command at the end. So the URL goes through the same render and everything, and they're time limited. So basically, when I'm writing a blog, there's many iterations, of course. So as I spin through the iterations, another one is generated, and then they all get deleted a while later. So comments and suggestions. So I have 2 opt-in things basically for users. So users need to sign up for comments. But one thing that I did is that a lot of sites use things like Discuss or other tools for comments. I just got the AI to build my own. So it's an all native comment platform backed by Cognito user pools. So basically when somebody wants to make a comment, they have to register. And then in the admin panel, I have a setup where I can moderate the first comment for everybody and all the other ones if need be. So it's all not depending on anything else. So, and subscriptions work the same way. People have to do the double confirmation to sign up and agree. And in every email, there's a unsubscribe button. I was trying to be very picky to meet all of the rules that SES might put on me for denying my application. So it was pretty easy to implement all these things with Claude. So the newsletters, I haven't sent newsletters out yet, but I was able to iterate with Claude to basically get different forms of newsletters that I thought of would be useful. So just a free form newsletter where you can type whatever you want in the Markdown editor, or I mentioned this earlier, an article roundup where I have a checkbox of all of the articles I've sent out, and it'll make a nice little card and a quick description of each of them and put them in the email. I'll show an example of that after. And then another approach would be curated links, where I could go and find interesting links that are from the internet, and it would go reach out and grab the card for them using the Open Graph tag and get all the information about the articles, and then build an email to send out to the users. So custom analytics. So this was an interesting one because I really wanted to understand who was looking at my post. I had no idea if 5 people were looking at them or 200 people were looking at them. I had no idea. So, and I didn't really want to pay that money I was talking about earlier to Vercel for that. So I figured it can't be that hard. So it really wasn't that hard. Most of the challenges were actually dealing with time zones. And I'm sure anybody that's done native development around time zones knows what that's like. So dealing with GMT and daylight savings change and all that stuff. So it took a while back and forth with Claude to get all of those correct. And I kept thinking of more time periods that I was interested in, like show me the stats for the last 3 hours, show me the stats for the last week, show me the stats for the last month, that kind of thing. So that was actually one of the biggest time wasters probably with Claude, was just figuring all that out. But honestly, if I was trying to figure that out myself, it would have been just a big waste of time, because I've wasted so many days of my life dealing with time zone offsets.
So do you have your custom analytics, for example, you say it's written to DynamoDB, one write per page view. Is that initiated via the client, or is it sort of via an intermediary Lambda function?
I believe it's by the client. I'm not really 100% sure right now, but yeah. Okay. I already talked about a lot of the AWS services. This is just talking about some of the other tools that I used. So I'm a big Terraform person. Anybody that's read any of my posts knows that I pretty much use Terraform for everything. So Terraform manages pretty much everything, except there's a few CLI things. The Lambdas are running in Node. I typically write all my stuff in Python just because I find it easier to follow. But in this case, I thought performance would be a little bit better with Node. So we're running with Node, running on Graviton. It's just a basic, the admin page is just a basic React 19 page with plain JSX. There's none of the more recent improvements, because my knowledge on React kind of ended about 5 years ago. So it's really just core React stuff that I'm using. So you mentioned earlier, it was funny about TypeScript. I'm not a TypeScript person, and I kind of assumed that Claude would by default generate TypeScript, but it didn't. So, and I'm happy about that, because I'm still learning TypeScript, and think it's, from a lot of my projects at least, it's overkill. So I usually stick to Python. But in this particular case, the Claude generated really good JavaScript. So, and I think one of the most important things of it all is the editor that I use. So I found a Markdown editor called MDX Editor, which is built on something called Lexical, and I think it works really well. So I'll show you a demo of that later. But it really makes it very easy to edit and be confident that things are going to look right in the end. So, and for CI/CD, I'm using GitHub Actions. So every time I push to main, it fires up GitHub Actions and takes care of deploying. So
I liked at the top of your previous slide where you said the tech stack was boring, boring, proven, serverless.
That's what we want, right? Boring, so it doesn't fail when it's a bad time. Okay. Now to talk about some of the AI part of it all, which is probably what people are interested in. So the actual workflow with Claude is really just a big loop of over and over me describing what I wanted to do in plain English. I'm sure most of the viewers have probably used Claude or similar tools. I include lots of typos and mistakes in my instructions, and it seems to pile through them and ignore all of the typos, so that's good. Claude proposes a plan, and usually asks me to clarify things that I've left a little bit vague, and then starts editing files. I typically use plan mode in Claude and get the plan correct before it starts going away and doing things. If not, it's a constant back and forth and hitting yes, 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 yes over and over. So I try to do the plan phase and then get it to go and do the actual implementation. It still typically comes back and asks questions. But
so do you then write that plan in a markdown file to store it, or are you sort of looking at plans as in a way a feature request per feature, and you just come up with a bit of a plan, do something, off you go, implement until we're done?
I'm not organized. So honestly, I literally write it down as I'm going, and I have some outlines of the plans that I have copy and pasted in other windows, and I tweak it for whatever given project it is. There are much better ways to do it, and I'm still learning on that front for sure. So
yeah, no, but I think this is why we're having different people on to talk about different kind of things. Because I have some things where I have used a specification, and it's something where also I'm going to be working with maybe somebody else. But otherwise, a very small, simple plan mode of just plan this before you're doing, or think deeply before you come up with an architecture is great.
Yeah. One thing that I always do though, it may not be as necessary now, but it definitely was a year ago when I started using Claude. You have to tell it, use the latest version of Python, use the latest version of Node, use the latest version of all your Terraform providers. I find that definitely was needed a year ago. It's possible that maybe it's a little better now, but I always put that in there just because I got burned so many times in the past. So the preamble, every time I start a project, I have this paragraph that I paste in, which I should put in a Claude MD file, that says use the latest version of Python, use the latest version of all of the tools. Look up the architecture. We'll get to it, but look up the recommendations from MCP servers like the AWS Knowledge MCP server, those kind of things. I put a preamble like that as my first prompt for any project. So yeah, I really should put a lot of that stuff in Claude MD files. But the way this works is we go back and forth, and there are a lot of times when Claude suggests something that makes no sense to me. And I think this is the real divide in the developer community. I think I'm able to push back a lot more that, why would you do that? That makes no sense, because I know that I've built something exactly like that before, and that path makes no sense. Where I have the feeling that a lot of people that are just out of university probably won't push back. So I think I can save a lot of bad paths from my experience. So I think there's a much bigger amount of productivity gain that, in the end at least, that a senior developer would be able to get. So. And then after we do the back and forth for a given feature and everything's happy, I get Claude to create a branch and push to GitHub. And then what I have set up in GitHub is I have Copilot set up to review, but then I've also included Q Developer on the reviews. Now I understand Q Developer is deprecated now. I'm not sure if Kiro has a way to become a developer on PRs in GitHub. I haven't really looked into that, but I kind of like the mix of Copilot, which is more focused on general coding practices, and Q Developer more focused on the AWS, even though it's basically out of date now because it's deprecated. It still works, I think, but I like having that combination. And then I come in after and do a high-level review. If it's something like that's for a POC or for a demo application, I don't read every line. And I'm pretty sure most people, if they're true to themselves, say they don't read every line either. If it's a production application, you need to read every line or almost every line. But I think the tools are good enough now for demos and POCs and stuff like that. You don't need to read every line, but you should have a high-level understanding of what the code is doing. So I think that's very important.
Yeah, I think, Q Developer, but Kira CLI does have a headless mode as well. So you can also run it in a CI/CD pipeline to, I presume, do the same kind of thing, although I haven't done it myself.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you can link it directly into automatically review code in GitHub. I have to look into that, but
Yeah,
that's what I would ideally like. I am using Kiro CLI as well too. So and after we review back and forth a few times, generally the flow is we deploy to a dev site, and then of course the back and forth of usually there's a few problems found. But I find that Claude is very good, and I'm assuming it's the same with other AIs. It's very good at being able to read CloudWatch logs and be able to narrow down a problem pretty quickly in 1 or 2 iterations. Usually the back and forth on the bugs that made it through code inspection doesn't take very long. I think this is one of the real big wins of having tools like models like Claude being able to read through logs and figure out problems very quickly, rather than me sitting there trying to trace through all the files. It's a real big win in that space, I think.
Are you doing the sort of testing yourself in a way when you have, browsing through the site? I suppose there's front end parts of it, back end parts of it, but you playing around with the site yourself,
Yes.
Find yourself an issue and then say, okay, Claude, off you go and do that. You don't have a way or something because I'm thinking Playwright from a front end perspective, for example, which I've had okay success where what is it? This is still failing. Go and fix it. This is still failing. Go and fix it.
Yeah, I kind of have 3 ways to handle that. So in some projects, I get Claude or other AI tools to write tests for me. I don't do that for my own personal projects usually, but what I typically do is I spot test myself. I kind of know in my head, these are the main things, whatever we just implemented is supposed to do. I go and test those out to make sure that they work. You mentioned Playwright. One thing that I don't really mention in here, but I've added since all of this was done, is I have a Nova Act process that runs via GitHub Action every week that goes through my site and makes sure that all of the pages are viewable and that they haven't been updated by anybody else and stuff like that. So I do have some of that embedded in there now. It's a little bit complicated, I think, to get running. It's taken me a while to perfect it, but I think the future is tools like that. One thing you asked me earlier, I think, Claude Code, what makes Claude Code different? Well, I can't really speak to the status of a lot of the other tools that have kind of caught up some to Claude Code since a year ago because I haven't used them all. But I find that the harness, I guess they call these things now, the Claude Code harness is much better than autocomplete from a year ago. It's a different kind of tool. It reads the entire project. It understands the Terraform module structure, the Lambda handler patterns. When I ask for a newsletter support, it knows what API route, like where the API routes are today and what to change, knows how the tables are structured. It's just so much smarter because it has all of this in its context of where everything is. So the other big thing is, of course, the tool use. I think that's the way that Claude Code uses tools, like NPM tools, curl tools, whatever. The way it uses those is so amazing and saves so much time. It's not just an LLM that was trained up to a year ago. It's able to do so many more things using all of those tools, and that's the real advantage, I think, and that's why the tools are so much smarter. Sorry, the harnesses are so much smarter than they were like a year ago.
And do you tell Claude what tools you've got, or does it just figure things out and say, well, this is a Terraform project. I presume you've got Terraform. Let's run Terraform plan.
Yeah, I think I have a slide here talking about it in a minute, but I have various MCP servers set up. So, for example, the AWS Knowledge server, I have a Terraform MCP server and a few other ones. I don't specifically say what tools to use. Oh, and another one that I make heavy use of is the diagram generation server. There was an AWS one that I believe is now deprecated, and then there is a newer one. It's hard to keep up, honestly, with the MCP servers and plugins and when they get removed and new ones are created, but I make heavy use of all those, but I don't specifically say use tool X in MCP server Y. I don't say that. So, actually, the next slide, hey, MCP servers. So, one of the most important parts about all of this is MCP servers and skills and whatever terminology each of the platform harnesses out there use. They're all pretty much the same thing. Basically, pre-canned advice on how to do X and a way to look up all of the knowledge that's out there. Like, for example, the AWS Knowledge MCP server. I've heard many people say the same thing as me, that I think it's the single most important thing when I'm building apps for AWS, the AWS Knowledge server. At one point, I was trying to understand what it was doing, and I said, Claude, go and write a file that says all of the times you use any tools and what you're using it for. And I was amazed the stuff that it was able to find and save me time by looking them up. Like, one of the big ones, like, again, is the MCP Knowledge server. And all of my projects are built in Terraform. So there was a Terraform AWS server. I believe it's deprecated now, and people are redirected to use the official one from HashiCorp. I find it's still not 100% good at Terraform. It does hallucinate parameters, names, and stuff from time to time. So it's not as good with Terraform as it is with Python code, for example. But I just have some examples here that I grabbed from some of my Git history of things where it was able to look up some of the things that would have taken me a long time to figure out myself. So
yeah, no, that's super useful. I really love that you've listed out, the not what the knowledge MCP server does, but the things that actually fixed for you. And sometimes I also find as well, yeah, it makes a mistake, but it's going to look at the mistake and go, oops, I messed that up, do another call and fix it.
Yeah. And it's not really directly related to the code, but when I build my demo projects, and even at my workplace when I build projects, I always like to have architecture diagrams. And if anybody's looked at any of my blog posts, they notice that they all have architecture diagrams. But I hate building architecture diagrams. So I think another one of the biggest wins with tools like this is being able to generate architecture diagrams. So the AWS diagram MCP server, which I believe is deprecated now, worked really well. There's a replacement, I think it's the deploy on AWS plugin, and there's a diagram skill in there. I find that it doesn't work quite as well as the old one, but it generally gets the diagrams to a really good starting point. And what I typically do is I say every time it makes a diagram, create a draw.io file and create a PNG from the draw.io file. And then I end up tweaking the draw.io file locally to fix all the little mistakes, like the corners are rounded or text is overlapping lines and stuff like that. But I think diagram servers are a really big win. Like, who likes drawing diagrams? I guess a few people might, but I certainly don't. But I think they're very important. So this is just an example of some Terraform that it created. In this case, I think it got everything right the first time, except one of the values I had to change, the retry policy or something like that. I had to change a little bit. But looking up all the syntax for all the Terraform modules and all the Terraform resources takes time. And being able to have a tool that just almost instantly goes and generates all that, it's really a big time saver. So generating things in all the different languages in my head that I've coded in probably 10 different languages in my career, and remembering the syntax of all of them is very challenging. So having a tool that can get it mostly right at least, and then I'll help with the last part, really makes a big difference. So. And this is kind of a timeline of how it worked for me that 1 week that I built it all. So on the first day, I don't want to sound like biblical or anything, but on the first day, I basically had everything working. I had, after 3 or 4 hours, I had the core platform. I had all of my articles copied over from Hashnode. You could see them all. I didn't switch over my domain to the site that day, but everything was working really well. Second day, I added comments, email subscriptions, monitoring, Slack alerts, that kind of thing. Third day, the analytics all came into place, at least the initial version of the analytics. I had to tweak a little bit with the incorrect time zone offsets and stuff like that, but setting up backups. The newsletter was one of the later additions, because of course it's not really key feature, and I'm not actually using it yet. So, and then the last day I set up the preview URLs and pulled in things like security things. I set up the WAF in front of the AWS Web Application Firewall in front of it all, which, mind you, is actually the biggest cost of the whole platform, is the Web Application Firewall. I probably don't really need it, but I just wanted to play around with it and understand all the different settings and all the different rules. So I think I counted 70 commits, 11 big features. I probably sat there typing things for 10 hours. And as I said earlier, the cost is in this, I think it's close to $10 with the WAF, but it's still pretty cheap compared to a comparable platform that I would buy from anywhere else. And after this, I did add a whole bunch of smaller features, but this was kind of the core of it for when I wrote the article. So. And then, as most people have likely experienced, everything isn't perfect with AI. AI leads you down the wrong path a lot. And as I said earlier, I think the experience level of the user drives how much of this happens and how much time it costs you. So I went through the Git history and it was able to pull out things where we went down the wrong path and how much time approximately we wasted. So there was one case where it was trying to install a library in my Lambda function to manipulate images, the Sharp library. And the code that it generated, the Claude generated, was wrong, but it was silently failing. And We spent over an hour trying to figure that out back and forth. I think this was at like 1 a.m. I remember trying to do this. And there's other examples here as well. And probably a lot more of shorter time frame. But overall, I think I'm well ahead with the time it saved me compared to the time that it cost me. So that's kind of one of the takeaways, key takeaways that I have from it all. So.
Well, you're not too bad. EaryEdit says that would take me way more time to figure that out. So
yeah, exactly.
I was thinking that as well.
Several times, well, I mentioned this already, but several times during the process, I think my experience helped a lot. I think there'll be a lot more of yes, okay, from a new grad at a university who doesn't know, hasn't gone through the trenches of building applications and debugging them and stuff like that. So I think some of the key things for human oversight, though, of course, as everybody mentioned, is security. Tools like Claude generally use star for all of their resources and all of their scopes for all their IAM permissions, and need to push back on that because we know that, yes, for a demo app, you write the post on the internet, that might be okay, but even a personal app or a blog, it's going to be on the internet. You don't want to have those set up like that. So I think security is the key thing. Another thing that that Claude and I kind of debated on and that I think was important is that when I publish the site, there's a process. It's probably inefficient, but right now it regenerates all of the articles every time I hit the publish button. Wasn't an easier way to do it. So it takes about a minute or two to publish everything. So I wanted that to be synchronous so that when you hit the button, I would sit there and wait until it said, yes, okay, everything was published. But Claude didn't want to do it that way. It wanted to just say, okay, let's start the process and be done with it. But I didn't like that idea because I wanted to know, yes, it's solid. I'm confident that the site is published. So. The cost, I talked about it a little bit. There's mostly pennies. Most of the serverless services on AWS cost pennies. It's all pay per use. Even if I was super successful with the blog, I can't imagine this costing me any more than $20 or $30 a month ever. So, and I don't really need the web application firewall, for example. So at some point I may scale back that, use some smaller set of rules, for example. So key takeaways. AI development is real, practical, and it's here. We kind of all have to live with it. I was pretty skeptical at first, but I'm pretty much all in now. I think it's changed the industry for good. Yes, there may be some kind of bubble burst, but I don't think most developers are going to go back to writing every line of code by hand anymore. So I think the key is MCP servers and other skills and other files like that really help a lot. They really save a lot of time. Of course, domain expertise. There's a question about 15 years from now, where's the domain expertise going to be, which I don't think I really have an answer for, but I think it's here to stay. I think some of the keys, like you mentioned earlier, build projects that mean something to you. You'll want to work on it more if it's something meaningful to you rather than just some really cool application that you'll never use. So that's pretty much it. And I just wanted to add one thing. I was at reInvent in December, and I honestly was really inspired by Werner's developer keynote, where he talked about the developer renaissance. I really do believe what he said, that that we're at a really amazing point in time where developers can do so many things with the tools that we have available to us today. So.
Yeah, okay. I love that. I love that framing. The whole Renaissance developer, I've loved thinking about and noodling over this whole year as well.
Yeah. So I think we only have a couple of minutes left, but I was just going to show people a quick demo of of the admin site. Just give me 1 second here, and I find the right window. So is that visible now?
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay. So this is the admin page, the single page React app that I was talking about. So what we have here is all of the articles. You see, there's one that I'm working on now that I haven't published yet about S3 vectors. So we have the dates they were all published. I can go in and edit and delete, of course. But what I want to show is that I'll go into this one, and you can see the editor that I'm using. So it has a Markdown format, which we're in, or sorry, it has a WYSIWYG format, which we're in now. And I see one problem here, that it doesn't really render tables very well. I know in the end they get generated correctly on the live site, but they don't look so well in the editor here. And then if I go over and switch to the Markdown side, this is generally where I start out with, is I build them offline and then come in here and paste the Markdown in, and then switch back over to the WYSIWYG editor, and I can go and like upload files and stuff like that. So I didn't code any of this. This editor was all the main part of the editor, at least, is an open source tool, and then I worked with Claude to make it work well. So we have this is where on the right here I have things like where it can generate an excerpt, and when you hit generate, it actually reaches out to Bedrock to go and create an initial version of it based on what it reads in the body. And I set tags. I can create a cover image, the SEO title and description get generated by Claude initially. Generally, I tweak them because I don't really like what it comes up with by default. But then I have a newsletter system. I haven't sent any of these out yet. These are all test newsletters. But the idea is that this one here, I put in some links that I found on the internet, and it generates cards, and it also actually includes a preview image for them when it sends the email out to the users. And then there's another kind where it's actually a roundup, which is basically some of my blog posts where I can check all of the blog posts that I've published and pick which ones I want to include in the roundup. And then the email that gets sent out has a preview and a link to all of those. Here's my analytics page. It's very similar to most other web-based analytics. You can change the time frame. You see it stores everything back to the beginning of time in my DynamoDB tables. It shows which links, it shows refers. It's all pretty standard analytic stuff. But the good thing is that Claude and I built it, and it's all almost free. So really impressed with the analytics page. Comments. This is a comment that somebody had that they've never commented before, so I just have to approve it. So, and then here's my list of subscribers, and then in the AI part where it reaches out to Bedrock, I have where I can pick which model I use. And then generally for the analytics, I exclude my own IP because when I'm testing it, I hit the page a lot. So I use my own IP, which isn't actually either one of those. I deleted it out of here for the demo. So, and I think that's pretty much everything I wanted to show, Julian. I know it's a little more heavy on the slides and less on the demo than you guys are used to, but I think I covered everything that I wanted to. So.
No, it's perfect. I think the wisdom is in not just the slides, but what we're talking about as well. I'm just going to flick through some of the comments right at the beginning. Higgy was saying, I'm not a front-end person either. These agentic tools quasi make me one. I'm also pretending to be a front-end person, but I'm not at all. We did have Reginaldo. Thanks for joining us again via YouTube, 8597. Yeah, OpenSpec. So when we were talking about it, just install it and use it. Game changer. The less an agent has to guess the result, the better. So that was good. Emmy Caddick came back and said, also talking about Kiro and the AI DLC, so like software developer lifecycle, AI developer lifecycle. Also talking about specs. Walter Josie was asking about the tokens did you spend? Did you track that, or do you just got the max subscription and that was enough?
So the story on that is that since I switched to the 20 max plan, I've never come close to running out of tokens. So when I do check it quite often. But the most I've ever seen is that I was like 50% of the way to being throttled again. So I really like the buffet style of Claude. I'm sure that's coming to an end, but at least for now, I haven't burned through my tokens since I switched to the max plan. But we'll see.
Take advantage while you can. And then Mike P. Funk said, I created a skill that teaches you and slows down the model so you can follow it better. That sounds awesome. Mike, please put a link to the skill in the chat if we've got time. But yeah, that sounds great. Yes, you can obviously turn it on and turn it off, obviously. That sounds fantastic. Darryl, I'm so happy we had you on. I wanted to get people in the AWS community who are in the trenches actually building the things, because I know there are a lot of people and a lot of bluster and a lot of chat about all the ways you could do it. And I love how you've built a really robust, secure workflow that is really interesting. You've harnessed Claude to the best of your abilities, and you've picked some paths and avoided some others. So yeah, we really appreciate hearing your insights because super useful. Well, but Jose, I know you did ask about instantaneous software. In your opinion, the direction of SaaS will take that are purely software. I don't have an easy answer to that. I think some of SaaS could be doomed. Some of the SaaS could be a massive explosion, depending what it is. So that's my quick answer, because we've only got seconds. Darryl, thank you very much. Appreciate you spending the time with us in Serverless Office Hours. And next week, you'll probably be back in the chat. So yeah, if you see Darryl in the chat, please thank him for putting this all together and teaching us a bit more about serverless and particularly AI coding. So
great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody. See you next week. Bye-bye.